Hello Internet, and welcome back to the real world for another drawing tutorial. Uh, this will be a series that I will try and keep up with once I get back to my regular filming about once a week. Don't know what's wrong with Camtasia, still trying to fix that. This program still seems to work, so I'm going to go with that. Alright, let's hop into the tutorialing. The way I start off any humanoid figure is drawing the head, because that really defines where the rest of the body is going to go. You should probably be starting with the feet, or at least a notion of where the ground is in a full-blown drawing, but I'm just showing off the humanoid figure, so I didn't bother putting in a background. The oval shape is the cranium. That's where your brain goes, and that oval pretty much defines the boundaries of your brain, except for the little bit that sticks off and goes down to your spine. Now, this is a man. So the distinguishing features of a man over a woman in the head are going to be the boxy chin shape, and the neck curves out rather than curving in. On a woman, the neck would curve in, and the chin would be a much more curved shape. Well, pointed at the bottom, at the chin, and then curved upwards a bit more. So here I'm just laying in the basic skeleton for the hand and arm. Originally, I wanted to have this guy casting some sort of magical spell, but then I drew the arm and it looked stupid for spell casting, so I tried to cover it up by drawing a big sword, which didn't come out very big. I'm gonna erase that at some point. It'll be better. This is why you should always have an image in your head of what the drawing is going to be like before you start drawing. I had sort of a loose image and then it fell apart. But whatever. Since this guy went from being a mage who is scrawny to a warrior who is big and burly, we're gonna be making some changes to what the shape of the arms and legs and body would have been. Now, this is actually kind of a good thing because it gives me a chance to show off armor and shading metal, which is something that a lot of people have a lot of trouble with. But I've kind of figured out. I like where I am right now. I will get better in the future, hopefully. I mean, that's the goal, isn't it? But I think it yields some acceptable results. It looks good. Good enough for now. So here I'm blocking in the upper torso, and you can see the chest is shaped sort of like a squished barrel. I formed that by just curving down from where the neck is, making a line, and rounding it off, making kind of a boxy oval shape that swings around to the shoulder farther away from us. And then to give it some definition, I finish off the barrel. Then underneath that, I curve down and form the shape of the butt. It kind of bumps out a bit. Now this skeleton is kind of a crutch. I've been meaning to stop using it, although I don't know if that's quite possible without an actual model. It is kind of hard to position things if you're not drawing from a skeleton or real life. I suggest if you want to get good quick, you should be doing this and drawing from real life a lot. I took a life drawing course in conjunction with some animation for a week, and I got immensely better at figure drawing almost instantly. So here I'm drawing in the basic shape of the helmet and the shoulder guard, which is vexing me, and now that I have the final drawing, it still vexes me. But I think I got the final positioning a bit better than it is here. That is not the positioning that it should be. It's more upswept. So this is a character that I've drawn before. I'm going to be using him and a few others a lot because they're familiar, and so I know how to draw them well already. and it'll be easier for me to bring better content because I won't be bumbling around trying to redesign armor. The main thing to think about with armor is not really the shading, it's the details and how the details are going to affect the overall look. This guy has a lot of spikes on his armor. I've actually cut back on how many there are since I first drew him. And those, while impractical, look really cool, and they give an imposing figure to him. This is not a person you want to mess with. If I had room for the full shoes, you would have noticed that there are kicking spikes. I was drawing this in class, and I did the original one in class, and my friend who does Muay Thai, which is Thai kickboxing, said there should be kicking spikes on the shoes, so I put kicking spikes on the shoes. Now, the chief thing with armor, and one of the places where you can get into a lot of trouble, is it needs to look at least somewhat believable. It needs to look like it could actually work and actually move. So I've done this sort of chitin. Chitin is the exoskeleton of a bug. You can see the 2 overlapping plates and the 3 overlapping plates in the wrist where the armor actually moves. I use bugs and the natural world as a source of inspiration for armor because, well, it looks cool and it works, and it's been proven that it works. Now, this is also faithful to medieval armor in some ways. This chest plating, it actually is mostly correct. Real armor plates for the chest are closer together and then bolted in before battle. But I like the dramatic impact of them being slightly farther apart and then having a huge leather strap connecting them. Here's where I've taken some more liberties. These leg guards, they're based on, if you've ever seen Japanese armor on peasant militia, I watched far too much anime. They have these sort of side flaps, and those are designed because a katana will slice through most armor, so they went for speed rather than defense. But we're assuming that on this guy, those plates are made out of solid metal. Now, one of the things I'm also excited about with this drawing is I can show off my cheat to chainmail, because anyone who was ever a fantasy buff as a kid and tried to draw chainmail knows that all of those circles are really annoying. It's just like trying to draw dragon scales. It looks only okay, and it takes hours. So I'm gonna show I have a little method for overcoming the time-consuming part of that. The latter bit of this video is going to be dedicated entirely to the shading, which is something people have a lot of trouble with. I'm going to say you guys should start off with noir, that style that I showed off in the first one of these longer, more drawn-out videos, because it forces you to focus not on nitpicky things like shading, which are really kind of unimportant in the grand scheme of things, and it forces you to focus on silhouette. I finally figured out what that word was. And it forces you to focus on good composition, which I think is infinitely more important than shading. Personally, I like this drawing as it is without the shading. It could work as a drawing like that. Now, I am going to shade because, well, I'm nitpicky. But for your first few drawings, I would suggest that you try not shading at all. And just see where that takes you, because if you aren't shading well, and it's hard to shade well, it took me years to get to a level that was even tolerable I'm at a tolerable level. I'm nowhere near where I want to be. Um, it you can get bogged down in the details, and that's not something that you want to do. You want to get bogged down in significant details. And a line drawing can teach you more than shading. So rather than spending a lot of time, just try doing a drawing and either not shading it or just figuring out where the sharp highlights would be and blocking in big black shadows for everything else. Take a pen. Pen works with noir. Alright, enough on that. I'm going to show off the chainmail now. So what I do is I just draw some diagonal squiggly lines and then more diagonal squiggly lines, so I make little boxes. It's a lot faster than drawing all those darn circles, and it works well with this sort of darker shading style, because this guy is going to come off a bit dark. Now, the fundamental principles of shading metal are thus. Shiny metal has harsh highlights, and the harsher the highlights, the shinier it's going to look. So you need a clear distinction between black and white if you're gonna do shiny metal. That's what's gonna make it look shiny, and I do that for the hard plate elements, but I do a slightly more gradual shading for the chainmail because it's not as harsh as the plate. The second principle of shading with metal is there are highlights where you wouldn't think there would be highlights. If you've ever looked at a shiny pipe, let's say, you must have noticed that there's the light, whatever your light source is, and it's shining, and there's a big highlight there. And then you look to the side where there shouldn't be any highlights, and there are. So I'm going to show this. That little circle I've drawn is my light source. It's just a random floating magical orb of light because there's no sun or anything in this drawing. But I use it as a reference point. If you're going to start shading, I suggest you do that. So you can see the harshest highlights and the brightest highlights come where they would be hit by that little orb. Now, when you're using a round object of any kind, metal, wood, doesn't matter what, you should have at least a little bit of shading, or at least that dark outline to define where the edge is, because otherwise you're just going to have nothingness fading into more nothingness, and it's going to look weird. So here you can see the shiny shading with the really harsh delineation between black and white. And down there, I imagine that leg guard as being not metal, but hard leather or maybe even wood. Now the way I achieved this sort of back shading is either this method, which I'm doing right now, where I draw in the harsh highlight, or the harsh shadow and the harsh highlight, and then shade behind the dark, or I do normal shading, and then I erase out a highlight. And both of those work basically the same way. But the way it should go with a shiny piece of metal is gray, darkest dark, lighter, 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 white. So we're coming to the close, so I'm going to give some final notes. This drawing comes off rather dark. If you wanted to give it a lighter feeling, you could put some white gouache where all of those bright highlights are. Gouache is basically watercolor, except it's more opaque. So if you use some white gouache, for instance on the gauntlet, which is the handpiece, you could put some white gouache up top there. Alright, that is all for this tutorial. I'm going to let you guys enjoy the final product, and thanks for watching.